I'm Jenny Callahan, and at my own engagement dinner, I watched my fiancé lift my adopted sister's hand to his lips, like he was practicing vows, right in front of my parents and my brother. I remember the crystal chandelier throwing little halos across the table. I remember my mother's smile tightening like a drawstring. I remember my father clearing his throat like he could cough the moment back into decency. And I remember the third life thought that landed in my chest, calm as a gavel. This is the scene they always pick her in. This time, I'm not begging for a role. I'm ending the show. I set my napkin down. I took out my phone. I tapped play. A recording filled the room, soft at first, then sharp enough to cut glass, my fiancé's voice. If you flare up during the toast, they'll pressure Jenny to step aside. She always caves. She was trained to. My adopted sister's giggle, small, breathy, practiced. And if she doesn't? His laugh. Then we make her look cool. My mother's fork clinked against her plate. My brother went still. My father's face drained so fast it looked like someone unplugged him. I looked straight at all of them and said, "Congratulations. You can keep each other. I'm keeping my life." Then I stood up and walked out. But to understand why I didn't cry, why I didn't even shake, you have to go back to the day I became 8 years old again. The third time. The day my family brought her home. The first thing I felt was the carpet under my bare feet, soft, beige, expensive. The second thing was the smell of my mother's perfume drifting up the stairs, peony and something bitter underneath. The third thing was a familiar kind of dread that didn't make sense for an 8-year-old, unless that 8-year-old had already lived 2 full lives. I blinked at the hallway mirror and saw a little girl with messy brown hair and a too big t-shirt with a cartoon dolphin on it. 8. Downstairs, voices rose and fell like a ceremony was happening. My brother's voice, Ethan, older even then, already 11, already the family's golden boy. Is she coming now? My mother, Claire, bright, trembling with purpose. Be gentle, sweetheart. She's been through so much. My father, Mark Callahan, steady, proud, like he'd purchased a miracle. We're doing the right thing. The words hit me like a line I'd heard in a nightmare. We're doing the right thing. In my first life, I'd stormed down those stairs and screamed that I didn't want a stranger in my room, in my house, in my family. In my second life, I'd tried a different version. Quiet resentment, icy sarcasm, stiff politeness that still smelled like rejection. Both lives ended the same way. The stranger became the sun, and I became the shadow that was expected to be grateful for the dark. So in my third life, I did something new. I stayed upstairs. I sat on my bed and put my hands flat on my knees like I was practicing being invisible. I listened to the front door open. I listened to the hush that followed, the reverent kind of hush people use in churches and hospitals. Then my mother's voice softened into surf. "Oh, honey, come here. You're safe now." A small cough. A tiny voice. "Thank you, Mrs. Callahan." My brother's voice, immediately protective. "Hi, I'm Ethan. I can show you my video games." My father's laugh, warm, proud. "We'll take care of you, kiddo." And then, the sentence that rewired the house for the next decade. "She has a heart condition," my mother said, like it was a crown. "Congenital. The doctors say stress can trigger episodes. We have to keep things calm for her." Calm. In our house, calm always meant, "Jenny, don't make it harder." I stared at my childhood desk, at the spelling list taped to the lamp, and I felt the future stack itself neatly in my mind like labored boxes. If I fought,
I'd lose. If I begged, I'd lose. If I tried to be better, I'd still lose, because better wasn't what they wanted from me. They wanted less. So I decided, at 8 years old, to give them exactly that. Less Jenny, more distance, more planning, more leaving. At dinner that night, they called me down like I was being introduced to a new pet. "Jenny," my mother said, beaming too hard. "Come meet your sister." I walked into the dining room, and there she was, small, pale, dark hair tucked behind her ears, wearing a cardigan like she was already cold. A stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms. She looked up at me with wide eyes that were too calm for a child who'd supposedly been through so much. I knew that look. Not from her, yet, but from my own past. It was the look of someone measuring the room. My mother crouched beside her.
"This is Lily." My father smiled like he expected me to clap. "Say hello, Jenny." Ethan stood behind Lily like a guard dog. He was already leaning in, already invested. Lily's voice was soft. "Hi." I watched my mother's face, searching for the part where she remembered she already had a daughter. I didn't find it. So I nodded once and said, "Hi." My mother blinked like she'd expected fireworks. "That's it?" I kept my face blank. What else should I say? My father's brows pinched. "Be nice." "I am," I said, still flat. I turned to Lily. "Welcome." It was polite. It was neutral. It was apparently unacceptable, because my mother's smile faltered and Ethan shot me a look like I'd stepped on Lily's foot. Lily clutched her rabbit tighter and glanced at my mother.
Then she lowered her eyes like a performance had begun. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't want to cause trouble." My mother's entire body pivoted toward her, like a magnet had snapped into place. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not trouble. You're a blessing." Ethan's voice sharpened. "Jenny, apologize." "For what?" I asked. "For being like that," he said, waving his hand like my existence was a smell. My father's tone dropped into warning. "Jenny." In my first 2 lives, this is where I'd cried, or shouted, or tried to explain that I wasn't being mean. I was just confused, scared, displaced. In my 3rd life, I simply said, "Okay, I'm sorry." Not to Lily, not to them, to myself, for ever thinking they'd handle it differently. Then I went back upstairs, and I began my exit plan. School became my sanctuary, not because it was kind, but because it was predictable. Worksheets didn't lie to me. Tests didn't suddenly faint when attention drifted away. Teachers didn't tell me to be the bigger person when someone took my seat. At 8, I asked for extra homework. At 9, I started reading books meant for middle schoolers. At 10, I learned how to type fast enough to turn thoughts into armor. My mother loved telling people, "Jenny is so independent." It sounded like praise in public. It meant, don't ask us to show up in private. Lily, meanwhile, became the house's heartbeat. Her condition dictated everything. When she coughed, my mother hovered. When she sighed, my father offered gifts. When she looked tired, Ethan would snap at me to be quiet, and whenever I had something, anything, that required attention, Lily's chest would apparently tighten like a timed lock. The first time it happened that life, it was my school play. I'd gotten a small part, 1 line, 1 moment under the auditorium lights. I'd practiced it in the mirror, the way kids do when they think being seen might change how they're treated. My father actually put on a tie. My mother put on lipstick. Ethan complained, but came anyway, because my mother insisted, family supports family.
We were 5 minutes from leaving when Lily emerged from the hallway, holding her chest like she'd seen it on TV.
I can't breathe,
she whispered. My mother spun around. Oh my God, Mark, her inhaler! My father's keys dropped on the counter. We should take her in. Ethan grabbed Lily's elbow. It's okay, Lil. I got you. I stood there with my script in my hand, the paper damp from my sweaty fingers. It's my play, I said quietly. My mother looked at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Then Lily made a small, pitiful sound. My mother's eyes filled instantly, like her tears had been waiting for a cue. Honey, she said to me, soft and sharp at the same time. We can't leave her like this. My father didn't meet my eyes. We'll make it up to you. Ethan's stare told me I'd better not argue, so I nodded. Okay. In my first life, I'd run to my room and sobbed into my pillow until I couldn't breathe either.
In my second life, I'd said, she's faking. And Ethan had shoved me into the hallway wall so hard my head rang for an hour. In my third life, I did something else. I walked to the fridge, took out a juice box, and went upstairs like I didn't care. Behind me, I heard my mother say, Jenny's so mature. And Lily, sweet, trembling Lily, whispered, I ruined it, didn't I? My mother soothed her. No, baby, you saved us from making a mistake. A mistake. That was the language of my childhood. I wasn't abandoned. I was corrected. By 11, I'd learned to celebrate myself quietly. I'd also learned Lily's patterns. She didn't flare up at random. She flared up at precision moments, when something was supposed to belong to me. My birthday, my awards, my parent-teacher conferences, my first sleepover invitation, my first crush. Her timing was so perfect it would have been impressive if it hadn't been my life. The worst was my 12th birthday, because that's when she added something new. Weaponized food. My allergy wasn't mild. It wasn't, I get itchy. It wasn't, my stomach hurts. It was the kind that made nurses move fast and doctors speak in clipped tones. Mango could close my throat in minutes. My parents knew. They'd been told by an allergist when I was 5. I had a bright red medical bracelet. We kept an EpiPen in the kitchen drawer next to the rubber bands and takeout menus. In my first life, I reminded everyone constantly because I was afraid. In my second life, I stopped reminding them because it felt like begging to be remembered. In my third life, I stopped reminding them because I wanted to see the truth without my own panic in the way. That year, my mother decided we'd have a family birthday dinner at home. Candles, balloons, the whole thing. I came downstairs and saw the cake on the counter. Glossy frosting, little decorative flowers, and bright orange-yellow fruit arranged like jewels on top. Mango. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at my mother. She was busy adjusting napkins, smiling at Lily, who stood nearby in an apron like she'd baked it herself. Oh, my mother said, clapping her hands. Surprise! Lily wanted to make it special. Lily's cheeks pinked. She pressed her hand to her chest as if emotion itself was dangerous. I worked really hard. I hope it's okay. Ethan grinned. It looks amazing, Lil. My father leaned in to look. Wow, that's impressive. I stared at the mango slices, then at my mother's face. I asked very calmly, Mom, do you remember what I'm allergic to? The kitchen went quiet. My father's smile froze like someone hit pause. Ethan's eyes slid away, like he couldn't decide whether to defend Lily or pretend he hadn't heard me. Lily blinked, slow. Her lips parted like she was trying to remember a line. My mother's mouth opened, closed. Then, because it was easier to reframe me than face herself, she said, Jenny, don't do this right now. Do what? I asked.
Make a scene, Ethan snapped. I looked at him. I asked a question. Lily's eyes shimmered. Her voice wavered.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm trying to be a good sister.
That's when I saw it. The tiniest curve at the corner of her mouth. So quick most people wouldn't clock it. But I had 2 lifetimes of data. It wasn't confusion. It was control. My mother rushed to Lily immediately.
Oh, sweetheart, no! You did great! I could have hurt her,
Lily whispered, clutching her chest like guilt was squeezing her heart. My father finally spoke, voice thick. Claire, we should swap it out. My mother's face tightened. Then she glanced at me like I'd forced her into an embarrassing position. Jenny, she said, warning again. You have to understand, Lily's fragile. Stress, so am I said, still calm.
I'm allergic.
Ethan barked. Stop! And then Lily, right on schedule, made a small choking sound and swayed like a candle in wind. My mother gasped.
Oh my God! Lily, sit! Mark, call!
My father already had his phone out. Ethan grabbed Lily's shoulders. Nobody grabbed me. I stepped back from the counter, pulled the EpiPen from the drawer myself, and set it on the table where they could see it. I'm going to my room, I said. My mother didn't look up. Jenny, don't be selfish. Selfish. On my birthday. With mango on my cake. While my throat stayed open only because I'd refused to eat what she put in front of me. Upstairs, I shut my door, slid down against it, and stared at my hands until they stopped shaking. Then I opened my desk drawer and took out a notebook.
At the top of the first page, I wrote, leave plan under it. I wrote, 1. School. 2. Money. 3. Evidence. 4. Exit. Because if I'd learned anything from dying twice, it was this. People like my family didn't change because you cried. They changed because you cost them something. By 13, I was taking high school math. By 14, I'd skipped a grade officially, which my parents bragged about at dinner parties like it proved they were good parents. Jenny is brilliant, my father would say, clinking his glass. Always has been. My mother would smile and add, she's so driven, so independent. Nobody ever asked why my drive looked like escape. Ethan got taller, broader, more confident in the way he owned the space around him. He played varsity soccer. He got attention for breathing.
And he loved Lily, like she'd been stitched to his heart. He carried her backpack when she looked tired. He raised his voice at me if I used the blender too early because Lily needs rest. He glared at me when I laughed too loud. Once, when I was 15 and he was 18, he cornered me in the hallway after I came home late from study group. You think you're better than us, he said low. I blinked at him. I think I'm leaving. His jaw flexed. Lily says you look at her like she's trash. I look at her like she's a person, I said. People aren't fragile porcelain. They're responsible for what they do. Ethan stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne. Too expensive, bought by my parents, worn like status. You don't get to talk about her like that, he hissed. She's had a hard life. So have I said. He scoffed. No, you haven't. That was the moment something in me went cold and stayed there for years. Because it wasn't just my parents. It wasn't just Lily. It was my brother, the one person who should have been able to remember me before she arrived. He didn't just forget. He replaced. The only person who never treated me like an inconvenience was Caleb Foster, the boy next door with messy blonde hair and a laugh that made teachers soften. Our moms used to push us together on play dates when we were little, back when my mother still looked at me like I mattered sometimes. Caleb's family wasn't wealthy like the Callahans. His dad fixed HVAC systems. His mom worked nights as a nurse. Their house always smelled like laundry detergent and grilled cheese, and somehow that felt like safety. After Lily arrived, Caleb noticed the shift before anyone else did. "You're quieter," he said one afternoon when we were 10, sitting on the curb with popsicles dripping down our wrists. "I'm thinking," I told him. "About what?" I stared across the lawn at my house. Big, neat, trimmed like a magazine photo. "About leaving." He frowned. "Why?" I shrugged. "It's loud in there." He didn't understand then, but he didn't argue. He just sat with me until the sun started to fade. As we got older, he became my constant, not in a dramatic, romantic way at first, but in the way a lighthouse is constant. He texted me reminders to eat when I pulled late study nights. He brought me allergy-safe snacks without making it a big thing. He waited outside the school auditorium after events my parents missed. "Did they come?" he'd ask. "No," I'd say. He'd nod like he expected that, and his jaw would tighten like he hated it for me. By 16, he started saying a sentence that became my oxygen. "You're not crazy, Jenny. That's not normal." It shouldn't have mattered. I shouldn't have needed someone to confirm reality. But when you grow up in a house where you're always told you're overreacting, a simple, "that's real," can save your life. At 17, I got into a summer program that paid a stipend, real money, deposited into an account in my name. My mother tried to frame it like a family decision. "We're so proud," she said, then added, "Of course, your father and I will manage the funds." "No," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "It's in my name," I said, calm as stone. "I'll manage it." My father's eyes narrowed. "Jenny, it's my work," I said. "I'm learning financial literacy. That's part of the program." That was true, and it was also my excuse, because I remembered from my second life how quickly money could become a leash. My father sighed like I was being difficult. "Fine." But I caught the look my mother gave him, sharp, irritated, like she'd just been told no by someone she considered furniture. That night, I locked my bedroom door and logged into my account. Then I started step 2 of my plan. Money. In my second life, I'd learned too late that leaving without resources meant you came back. In my third life, I was never coming back. I didn't do anything flashy. No lottery tickets, no wild bets. I did what grown-ups did when they wanted stability. I invested in boring things I remembered would grow. I read books. I watched charts. I used my stipend to buy tiny pieces of a future I'd already seen. Caleb helped too, not with money, but with grit. When I told him my goal, his eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious," I said. He nodded slowly. "Okay, then we do it right." We spent afternoons at the library, not flirting, not gossiping, just building a blueprint like two kids playing at adulthood. Except I wasn't playing. I was surviving. When I turned 18, my parents threw Lily a health celebration. That's what they called it, because her latest checkup came back stable, and my mother decided the family deserved a party for enduring Lily's fragility. It happened in our backyard under string lights, with catered food and a rented white tent. People from my father's firm showed up. Neighbors came. My mother wore a dress that said saintly caretaker. Lily wore a pale blue dress and a bracelet with a tiny medical alert charm, because she loved reminding everyone what she carried. I wore a simple black dress and stayed near the edge, a guest at my own house. Caleb came too, because he always came when I asked, quietly, reliably. He offered me a cup of lemonade. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. We watched Lily accept compliments like gifts she deserved. Then my mother clinked her glass. "Everyone," she announced, "we're so blessed. Our Lily has shown us what strength looks like. She's brought our family closer." The crowd murmured, touched. My chest tightened. I wasn't jealous. I was exhausted. My mother continued. "And of course, we couldn't have done it without Ethan, our rock." Ethan grinned, putting an arm around Lily. Lily leaned into him like it was natural, like it was always supposed to be this way. My father's eyes found me briefly, flickered, then moved away. Then my mother added, casually, like it was nothing, "And Jenny, well, Jenny's always been independent." The crowd laughed softly, like independent was a cute trait in a child. I lifted my lemonade and took a sip, tasting sugar and bitterness. Caleb's hand brushed mine, barely, grounding. Then Lily stepped forward, smiling sweetly. "I actually have an announcement." My stomach sank. I already knew. In my second life, she'd done it at my graduation dinner. In my third life, she was just switching the setting. She held up a small envelope. "I got accepted to the same college as Ethan." Everyone clapped. My mother squealed. Ethan lifted her up like she weighed nothing. Then Lily's eyes, wide, innocent, found me. "And Jenny," she said, "I hope you'll still visit, even if you're busy." The pause before busy was a blade. Busy with escaping, she meant. Busy with not being theirs anymore. I smiled politely. Inside, I added another line to my notebook. 5. Wait,
Let them show themselves. By 19, I moved out. Not dramatically. Not with suitcases dragged down the stairs while my mother sobbed at the doorway. I moved out like a ghost. I got a scholarship. I got a tiny apartment near campus. I told my parents it was easier for studying. My mother hugged me stiffly and said, "Don't forget your family." My father patted my shoulder like I was an employee leaving the company. Ethan didn't hug me at all. Lily cried. "I'll miss you," she whispered dramatically, clutching her chest. I watched her face, searching for sincerity. I saw satisfaction. "Yeah," I said, "you will." Then I left. College felt like stepping into oxygen for the first time. Nobody expected me to shrink. Nobody told me my needs were selfish.
Nobody used another person's fragility as a weapon against me. I studied like my life depended on it, because it did, in a way. I took on part-time work. I saved. I invested carefully, steadily. I built a life that didn't need Callahan money. Caleb went to a trade program nearby, then started working. We stayed close. He'd show up with takeout when I'd forget to eat. He'd sit on my ratty couch and listen when I needed to unload. One night, after a brutal week of exams, I finally said out loud, "Sometimes I think I'm unlovable." Caleb stared at me like I'd insulted the sky. "Jenny," he said slowly, "your family is wrong about you. That's not the same as you being wrong." I swallowed hard. "It feels the same." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then we keep proving it isn't." We, that word mattered. Because my family always talked like love was something you earned by being less. Caleb talked like love was something you practiced by showing up. And he did. Every time. At 21, my parents called with exciting news. "Jenny," my mother said, voice bright. "Come home for Thanksgiving. We have a surprise." I almost laughed. In my first life, Thanksgiving was where Lily fainted when I mentioned my scholarship. In my second life, Thanksgiving was where Ethan announced Lily would be living in my old room permanently. In my third life, I already knew the surprise, but I went anyway. because part of my plan involved collecting evidence, and family gatherings were where masks slipped. Thanksgiving at the Callahan's house looked like a magazine spread. Perfect table settings, roasted turkey, cranberry sauce in a crystal bowl, candles flickering like tradition itself had been purchased. Lily wore a cream sweater and sat in my old seat like she owned it. Ethan sat beside her, shoulders wide, protective. My father carved the turkey with the seriousness of a man who believed he was the center of the family. My mother smiled so hard her cheeks looked sore. Then she clinked her glass, and I braced myself. "Everyone," she said, eyes sparkling. "We're so happy. Jenny is home." A few relatives I barely knew smiled at me. My aunt from Ohio waved. My cousin asked about school. Normal, surface stuff. Then my mother dropped the real bomb. "Jenny," she said, "we've arranged something wonderful for you." My stomach didn't move. "Okay." My father wiped his hands on a cloth napkin. "We've been speaking with a family friend, a good young man, great prospects." In my first life, this was where I'd protested, and they'd accused me of being ungrateful. In my second life, this was where I'd agreed, just to keep the peace, and it ruined years of my life. In my third life, I let them talk. "He's from a very good family," my mother continued. "His name is Graham Whitlock." Ethan smirked. "He's solid, not like those broke campus boys." Lily's eyes widened innocently. "Aw, Jenny, that's so romantic." My father nodded. "We think it's time you settle down." I set my fork down. "I'm 21. My mother's voice hardened slightly.
Exactly. Lily has had to grow up so fast. We want good things for both of you. There it was, the pivot. Lily's fragility used as a clock, a reason, a pressure. Graham Whitlock walked into our living room after dinner like a product being presented. Tall, expensive haircut, watch that probably cost more than my car. He shook my father's hand firmly, kissed my mother's cheek, and smiled at Lily like he already knew her. That caught my attention. When he finally looked at me, his smile widened like he was performing. "Jenny," he said smooth, "I've heard so much." "From who?" I asked. His eyes flipped, briefly, to Lily. Then Lily pressed her hand to her chest and let out a tiny breath like she was overwhelmed. "Oh," she whispered, "I'm just so happy.
"This is a lot." My mother rushed to her side. Ethan put a hand on her back. Graham's gaze stayed on Lily a half-second too long. In my first life, I would have ignored that because I didn't want to be jealous. In my second life, I noticed it too late. In my third life, I filed it away because the pattern was forming exactly the way I remembered. Only this time, I wasn't trapped inside it. I was watching it build, like a detective watching someone set their own alibi. Graham and I dated the way my family wanted. Public dinners, polite conversations, scheduled appearances. He liked that I was smart, but only in a contained way, like a bright accessory he could show off. He didn't ask how I felt about anything. He asked what I planned to do with my degree so it could fit with his future. He told me once, smiling, "I love that you're low drama." I almost laughed. Low drama. My family had trained me to be a locked box. Meanwhile, Lily began texting me. Sweet messages, concern, sisterly support. "Are you excited? I'm praying for you. I'm always here if you need to talk." If you looked at them on a screen, she seemed like an angel. If you lived with her, you could hear the undertone. "I'm watching you." Ethan called me more too, rare for him. "Don't screw this up," he said one night. like it was my job to maintain the family's image. Mom's finally happy. What about me? I asked. He sighed like I was exhausting. Stop making it about you. I hung up and stared at my ceiling for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started compiling files. Screenshots of texts, notes of dates, recordings when legal, email chains, evidence. Because I knew where this road ended, and I wanted to be holding the map when everyone else pretended they were lost. At 23, Graham proposed. It happened at a restaurant in St. Louis with a view of the river, white tablecloths, soft music, something my mother could post about. My mother cried at the table. My father shook Graham's hand like a business deal closed. Ethan clapped him on the back. Lily clasped her hands under her chin and whispered, "This is like a movie." Then she swayed. Of course she did.
Lily?
My mother gasped.
I'm fine.
Lily whispered, but her fingers went to her chest.
It's just emotion.
Ethan was on his feet instantly. We need air. Graham looked worried. About Lily, not me. Do you need water? I sat there with the ring on my finger, watching my engagement become Lily's medical moment. Again. My mother leaned toward me, voice tight. "Jenny, don't be upset. She can't help it." I smiled politely. "I'm not upset." And for once, it was true. Because I wasn't losing something. I was collecting proof. The climax arrived a year later at my engagement dinner, hosted at my parents' home, because my mother insisted on a formal announcement party with speeches. It was one of those evenings where everything looked perfect from the outside. Catered food, rented linens, family friends in cocktail attire, my mother glowing like she was hosting a charity gala. Caleb came too, invited by me, tolerated by my family, because he'd always been harmless. He stood near the back, watching quietly, like he knew storms when he saw them. Graham circulated like a politician. Lily wore a pale pink dress and a necklace that highlighted her collarbones, like she wanted eyes there. She looked healthy, glowing, not fragile at all, until she needed to be. My mother tapped her glass and smiled at the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "Our Jenny is finally stepping into her future." I almost choked at the word finally. Then she called Graham up to speak. He raised his glass. "Jenny is remarkable," he said, choosing the word like it was safe. "She's strong, intelligent, and..." His eyes slid to Lily. "And she has a wonderful family," he continued. "A family that taught her sacrifice, loyalty, grace." Lily's lashes fluttered. She touched her chest lightly as if moved. Then my mother, glowing, gestured at Lily. "And of course, our Lily, the heart of this family." The crowd applauded. I watched Lily's mouth curve just slightly. Then Graham stepped down and, without thinking he was being watched, leaned toward Lily and brushed his thumb along her knuckles. Intimate. Possessive. A hush rippled through the nearest guests. Someone's eyebrows shot up. A woman near the punch bowl whispered, "Oh my God." Lily's eyes widened like she'd been startled. Graham's hand lingered anyway. My mother saw it. My father saw it. Ethan saw it. And the way their faces shifted told me something I hadn't fully allowed myself to name. They weren't shocked. They were afraid I'd react. Afraid I'd make it ugly. Afraid I'd break the illusion they'd been maintaining. I stood up. The room quieted because people can sense when a lifetime of swallowing is about to become a spit. My mother's smile tightened. "Jenny, sweetheart." I lifted my phone. "I'm not making a scene," I said. "I'm ending one." Graham frowned. "Jenny, what are you doing?" I looked at him. "You tell me." Lily's hand went to her chest. "Jenny, please." Ethan stepped forward, eyes hard. "Stop." I turned my phone screen toward the room and tapped play. The recording poured into the air like truth finally getting permission to exist. Graham. "If you flare up during the toast, they'll pressure Jenny to step aside." Lily. "And if she doesn't?" Graham. "Then we make her look cool." A gasp went through the crowd like wind. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's jaw clenched. Ethan froze like the floor dropped out. Lily's face crumpled instantly, tears, trembling, fragile act launching like a rehearsed routine. "That's not... Jenny, you're twisting!" Lily sobbed, clutching her chest harder. "My heart!" My mother moved toward her on instinct, then stopped, caught between the old reflex and the new sound of evidence. I looked at my mother and spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone. "You know what mango does to me," I said. My mother blinked rapidly. "Jenny." "And you still let her put it on my cake," I continued. "On my birthday. You didn't even answer when I asked if you remembered." The room was dead quiet. I turned to my father. "You told me you'd make it up to me every time you left. You didn't." I turned to Ethan. "You called me selfish for wanting to be seen. You protected her so hard, you forgot I was your sister first." Ethan's face twisted. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed once, short, humorless. "You want to talk about fair?" Lily's voice rose, panicked. "I'm going to faint." I didn't even look at her. I looked at Graham. "You've been touching her like that for how long?" I asked. Graham's eyes darted. "Jenny, listen. Answer," I said, voice like steel. Lily sobbed louder. "Stop. You're stressing me." A guest, an older woman in navy, whispered, "Is she always like this?" And that tiny whisper was the sound of Lily's power cracking. Graham swallowed. It wasn't serious. I smiled coldly. "So you weren't serious when you planned to humiliate me into giving you my engagement, either." My mother finally found her voice. "Jenny, please, not like this." That sentence, "not like this," was the whole story. Not the truth, not accountability, just optics. So I did what I'd been training for since I was 8. I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table near the cake. "This is a termination agreement," I said. "Family relationship termination, financial separation, no contact, everything documented." My father's voice came out rough. "Jenny, you can't." "I can," I said. "I'm an adult, and I'm done." Ethan stepped closer, furious. "You're blowing up the family because you're jealous." I turned my head slowly. "Jealous?" I opened the folder and slid out copies, bank statements, transfers, receipts. "I tracked every cent you gave me after I moved out," I said. "Every helpful deposit, every tuition payment you insisted on controlling, every gift." My mother's face went white. "Why would you?" "Because you always held it over me," I said, "and I'm not carrying it anymore." I pulled out a cashier's check. "I'm paying it back," I said. "All of it, down to the last dollar." My father's eyes widened. "That's... Where did you..." "I worked," I said. "I saved. I invested. I built a life you don't own." The guests were openly staring now. Phones subtly lifted. Whispers crawled across the room. Lily sobbed. "You're ruining everything." "I'm correcting it," I said, finally looking at her. Her eyes were wet, her cheeks flushed, her hand pressed to her chest like a badge. I stepped closer, voice low but audible. "You never wanted a sister," I said. "You wanted an audience." Her mouth opened. I didn't let her speak. "And you're going to have one," I continued, "just not from me." I turned to my mother, because this part mattered most. "You asked me once if that was all I had to say when you brought her home," I said. "So here's more." My mother's eyes glistened. "Jenny, I spent my childhood becoming small so she could feel big," I said. "Almost plays, birthdays, milestones. Every time I mattered, she'd hurt. And you didn't just fall for it, you rewarded it." My father whispered, "You were trying to do the right thing." I nodded slowly. "You kept saying that." Then I dropped the twist like a match. "I found her adoption paperwork," I said, loud enough for the entire room. "The sealed file you thought was gone." My father flinched. My mother went rigid. Ethan's face snapped toward my dad. "What?" Lily's crying hitched. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. I continued, calm. "She wasn't some mystery orphan you rescued. She's not a random miracle you brought home." My father's voice came out hoarse. "Jenny, don't." "Her birth mother signed her over in St. Louis," I said. "The same woman Dad paid off for years." A collective inhale swept the room. Ethan's face twisted in confusion. "What are you saying?" I looked straight at my father. "Say it." My father's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. My mother whispered, "Mark." And Lily, sweet Lily, went still as stone. I said the truth cleanly. "She's your affair child, Dad." The room didn't just go quiet. It went hollow. Ethan staggered back like he'd been hit. "No. No, Dad." My mother's eyes filled, but not with surprise, with exhaustion, with something older. "You knew," I said to her. My mother's lips trembled. She didn't deny it. "You both knew," I said. My father's shoulders sagged. "Jenny, we were trying to protect the family." I let out a single laugh, sharp. "By sacrificing me?" Ethan's voice broke.
Mom, is it true? My mother's tears fell. Ethan, please. Lily's face cracked. Her breath sped up. Her hand pressed harder to her chest. Real panic now because her story was finally exposed. Graham looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. I stood in the center of it all and felt nothing but clarity. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm ending the engagement, publicly now. Graham swallowed. Jenny, wait. No, I said. You wanted Lily? Take her. Lily's eyes snapped to him, hope and terror warring. My mother lurched forward. Jenny, please don't punish Lily for what? I cut in. For existing? I'm not punishing her for existing. I'm holding her accountable for manipulating my life. Lily sobbed. My heart. I raised my hand. Stop. It wasn't loud.
It didn't have to be. The word landed like a slap. Then I turned to the guests, because justice requires witnesses. I'm not asking for sympathy, I said. I'm asking for the truth to stand in the light. I'm leaving this family. Tonight. Permanently. My father's voice was small. You're our daughter. I looked at him, steady. You treated me like collateral. I slid the termination agreement toward him. Sign it, I said, or don't. Either way, I'm gone.
Ethan's voice cracked. Jenny, please. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to share snacks with me before Lily arrived. The boy who used to laugh with me in the backyard. But then I remembered the hallway wall at 15. The selfish. The stop making it about you. I said, softer. You chose your role.
I chose mine. Then Caleb moved forward. He hadn't spoken all night. He just watched, jaw tight, eyes steady. He came to my side like he always did, quietly, without fanfare. You ready? He asked me, voice low. I nodded. My mother's voice rose, desperate. Jenny, don't go! I turned toward the door. My father whispered, Where will you go? I looked back one last time, at the table, the cake, the mango fruit arranged like decoration and threat, the chandelier lighting up lies. I'm going where I'm not required to disappear, I said. Then I left. Caleb walked beside me, and for the first time in my life, my feet felt like they belonged to me. We didn't drive far that night, just to Caleb's place because it was safe and familiar, and because my hands finally started shaking once the adrenaline dropped. In the quiet of his living room, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall, like I was waiting for someone to tell me I'd imagined it. Caleb brought me water. He sat next to me, close but not smothering. You did it, he said softly. I swallowed. I don't know what happens now. He nodded. Now you live. I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath since 8. The next days were chaos. Calls, messages, emails. My mother texted, Please, Jenny, we can fix this. My father emailed, We need to discuss this privately.
Ethan left a voicemail that started angry and ended broken. Why would you do that to us? Lily sent a long, dramatic message about her heart, about stress, about how I was cruel. Graham tried to call 3 times, then he sent a text. You humiliated me. I didn't reply. Instead, I did what I promised. I mailed the cashier's check to my parents with a detailed ledger. I attached the agreement. I sent copies through a lawyer Caleb's mom recommended, because nurses know people, and people know lawyers. I changed my number. I moved apartments. I tightened my accounts. And then I did something that felt like sunlight. I booked a small trip, just me and Caleb, to a cabin near a lake where nobody knew my last name. We sat on the porch with coffee in the morning, the air cold enough to bite.
Caleb looked at me over his mug. How do you feel?
I thought about it. I feel like I'm finally the main character in my own life, I said. He smiled. Small. Real. Good. Because you always were. Weeks later, word trickled in through the grapevine because wealthy families can't keep messes fully hidden. Graham's family pressured him to salvage reputation. He proposed to Lily quickly, spinning it as true love discovered through hard circumstances. My mother posted a photo of Lily in a white dress with a caption about new beginnings and family love. My father looked absent in every picture. Ethan didn't appear at all. And Lily smiled like she'd won. But the cracks were there if you knew how to look. People who'd been at the party whispered.
Friends quietly distanced themselves. A few of my mother's charity board invitations stopped coming. My father's firm began hearing jokes. Lily got what she'd always wanted, the spotlight. But spotlights are hot, and if you've built your identity around being fragile, it's hard to survive heat. Months later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Ethan. Just 2 sentences. I didn't know. I should have protected you. I stared at it for a long time. In my first life, I would have rushed to forgive him, desperate for the family I'd never had. In my second life, I would have sent something sharp and cruel. In my third life, I simply typed, "I protected myself. I hope you learn to do the same." Then I blocked the number, not out of spite, out of boundaries, because the lesson of my 3 lives wasn't family is everything. It was simpler, harder, and truer. Love that requires you to vanish is not love. And if the only way you can breathe is by leaving a place that keeps suffocating you, then leaving isn't betrayal. It's survival. It's freedom. It's your first real act of loyalty to yourself.